1. I worked for a very large corporation in the IT department. I worked my way up from first-level support to the back-office team, aka escalation team, like second level but slightly above them. I essentially fix business-critical issues that are escalated up from first level and second level. On the back-office team, we are a team of 6, and we all have certain areas we specialize in, but are cross-trained in all areas to help cover when people go on vacation or call in sick. My area of expertise is the network team and another area that I cannot say, or it will give away the company I work for. But to put it in perspective, the company I work for owns several hundred retail locations from coast to coast in the USA. Because we are in the first fiscal quarter of the year, the budget is tightening. Not because the company is low on money, but because all of upper management wants to stay within a certain range, so they can get their bonuses for saving the company money. So a very strict no overtime policy is implemented. At first, I don't think anything of it because I prefer to work my 40 hours a week and spend time with my family. But there was a particular incident this past Friday that fueled my malicious compliance on Saturday. As I said before, there are 6 of us on the back office team, but on Friday we had one guy off on PTO and a couple of call-ins, which left just myself and another guy working, Matt. Matt worked the opening shift and I worked a later evening and closing shift to cover the West Coast. Because it was just the 2 of us, we were pretty busy. As the day wore on and closer to Matt's quitting time, we were slammed. We had 4 locations where the network had gone down, and I was dealing with 2 techs on site. I was trying to guide to set up new equipment. When 5 p.m. hit, Matt asked management if he could stay an extra 30 minutes to help me out. Management gave a very quick and hard no, and reminded us of the no OT policy. So Matt had to leave at his scheduled time, and leave me with a huge mess to try and fix. I worked the rest of the night on back-to-back issues, and I was able to get them sorted out before it was my quitting time. But I had to work through my break. This is when I decided I would not overextend myself and will follow the new policy. The next day is when the malicious compliance started. I was working the Saturday shift, and since Saturdays are slower, just 2 of us are scheduled. Well, on this particular Saturday, the guy I was supposed to work with called in, and because no OT was allowed, they couldn't call in another to help me out. As the day wore on, I was increasingly busy being the only back-office person working. The last hour of my shift, something broke on the server side and dozens of stores were not able to perform transactions or take credit card payments. I worked hard to resolve it, but the end of my shift was nearing. Cue malicious compliance. The end of my shift hit, and I had made 0 strides in fixing the issue. But because we were on a strict no OT policy, I clocked out and left, leaving dozens of stores down and unable to make money. I forwarded the information to the on-call supervisor, but they rarely check anything over the weekend. So the issue went untouched until Sunday afternoon, when management finally saw my reports and emails from Saturday afternoon. The company lost countless dollars in sales, probably in the 6-figure range at least. My phone was blowing up all day Sunday as management tried to get further details from me. But because of the no OT policy, I could not answer my phone, as that would require me to log hours, and that would be overtime. So I did not speak with management until today. When asked why I left work without fixing the issue, I simply showed them the no OT policy emails they have sent out every week for the past few weeks. They quietly dismissed me back to work, knowing they had messed up and caused this. A few hours of overtime cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. 2. I was 18 and had my license for half a year and bought my first car. The council decided the public parking space right in front of my house would be given to the neighbor, on the other side of the street. This was because of health problems, and that was all okay. She drove a 45 kph car. For the countries who don't have them, Google pictures of a Kenta. The parking spots on that street were so huge, I could fit, believe me I did, a Mercedes Sprinter long wheelbase 7 meters. And then have my direct neighbor, the original Karen, who liked to call the police for shouting in front of the garden when we were like 5 and playing. So the lady parked her Kenta in the designated spot, and I parked my car with my bumper above the line. The lady didn't say anything about it, just greeted me and walked in. Within 20 to 30 minutes, there was someone in front of my door, the police. So being 18, I thought I did something wrong. Opened the door, and they asked me who owns the car. I told them me, asked what's wrong. The police officer made a sigh. Well, you are technically parked there correctly, but we got a phone call that is too close to the other spot. So I came outside to double check and asked, confused. But it's in the lines, this is how you park, right? Yeah, but the caller said she is unable to get out now. So, I say, not trying to come over smart. She has a reverse, right? Yeah, but can you give her an extra 30 centimeters to keep the peace? So I did. Next day, I asked the lady if she had called the police and why she just didn't ask me. She told me I parked great and she had no difficulty with me standing where I was. Then I knew it was OP Karen. So I thanked her, got home, got one of those steel rulers, cut it into 20.5 centimeters, and used some super glue to glue it to the line of the parking, so if I touched the ruler with my tire, I knew my bumper was above the line and would not be complying with Karen's demands. After that, the police came almost on a weekly basis. I took them inside, got some coffee, told them the situation, and that the caller doesn't even own a car, and it's not her problem. The police did ask them to stop calling, as I had enough distance from the other spot to get out. Even when coming home late, I would see the curtains open, their face against the window, to see how I parked, and without missing a beat, as soon as the engine was off, they called the cops. Even better was another neighbor who would park his small car behind my car and still be in the same spot. Then they would call and say there are 2 vehicles in a spot for 1. If that happened, police came, asked who parked the second vehicle, and I told them I parked both of them for the neighbor after helping him or something. Police then were like, okay, if you both don't care and can drive away. They just left. I love how even when I got a work van for a side job I was doing, I could park it and annoy Karens. And one day, they had a moving van in front of their house. It was over the line of the lady. My PettyRevenge was close, so I called the police, who gave the Karens who hired the truck and drove it a big fat ticket for parking inside a handicap spot. 1 wheel is enough, and I took a chair and watched in silence as they moved away, enjoying every second. 3. Way back in middle school, I had to do a group project for science class. I was put in a group with 3 boys that were all popular and all slackers. Each group member had to research an animal, along with having a specific role that came with extra responsibilities. The roles were leader, keep the group on track and make sure all the info was accounted for, editor, look over everyone's finished work and check for spelling and grammar errors, resource leader, cite sources for all group members in a specific format, and website organizer, put together the website for all the info to be presented on. Despite my objections, the boys decided that I would be the website organizer, because a loser like me can't be trusted with more important jobs. Okay, fine, whatever. Over the course of the next week, I worked on researching my animals, setting up the various pages for each group member, pre-setting fonts for when they'd send me their info, and making it look pretty overall. Every day I'd ask them to send me whatever they'd finished so I could go ahead and add it to the website. Every day they said they weren't ready to send anything yet. By the end of Wednesday, day 3, I was done with my own research, as well as everything I could do in advance before receiving their info. After finishing, I sent my links to the resource leader so he could put them in the right format. Spoiler, he never did. I then asked the editor to check over my work, and after looking at it for about 3 seconds, he said it was fine and to leave him alone so he could finish a very important conversation he was having. The conversation was about Flappy Bird. Thursday and Friday were spent asking the boys to stop goofing off and to send me their info. They laughed it off and said they'd send it to me by Sunday morning. The day before the project was due, I was annoyed that I'd have to spend my weekend rushing to finish the project, but arguing was only getting me laughed at. Sunday rolls around, and after lunch I emailed the boys asking where their info was, and telling them I couldn't finish the project without it. No response. I sent a few more emails as the day went on, again no response. They refused to give me any contact info apart from their emails, so there was nothing else I could do. I get to science class on Monday, and we're one of the first groups to present. The first 2 groups presented all their info on the same website, and they all took turns in explaining what each of them contributed. It was here that I got a fun idea. The boys of my group went up one at a time and presented their, mostly incorrect, info on 3 separate, badly organized websites. After seeing them goof around so much, I was surprised they had even that much. I went last, and after I was done presenting, my teacher asked why there were 4 separate websites, and why there were empty tabs on my website. I loudly told her in the whole class that my group members refused to send me their info, and never informed me that they were creating their own websites. Being the website organizer, I also explained that the empty tabs were for their info, which they never sent me. Cue laughter from the whole class. After that, I sat down with a huge grin on my face while the boys scowled at me. Because I did everything I was supposed to, and more, I got an A. They were stuck with C's. And a long lecture from the teacher. For a few months, there was minor bullying from them, but I didn't care. I won. 4. My favorite example of malicious compliance happened when I worked some 20 years ago for a local government agency here in the US, which shall remain nameless. We were a small, well-run office with a supervisor who had a very laissez-faire style of leadership. And this worked. Do your job. If you have an idea, develop a program and we'll try it. If it doesn't work, no harm done. Take what we can learn from it and use that on another program. Many programs develop spontaneously, and there was a very collegial relationship within the department between everyone from the department head down to the administrative staff, and with other departments across the organization as well. That department head retired, and was replaced by a retired army colonel who was somewhat dictatorial in his style. Suddenly, multiple degreed professionals who were used to a significant amount of autonomy, and who consistently worked well beyond the hours for which they were paid, were being told they could not extend their lunch hour by 15 minutes once a week to participate in the local Rotary Club meetings. Despite that, we were expected to be involved in local civic groups as part of our job, and that they had to take a 15-minute break at the assigned time each day. As might be imagined, these administrative changes did not go over well. In response to the new top-down mandates, the informal leaders instituted policies of their own without ever saying a word. Suddenly, if their assigned break time occurred and they were on the telephone, they explained, "I'm sorry, but it's my assigned break time and I have to go now. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Meetings that were going on at 4:59 p.m. were abruptly adjourned with the note that those from the office were mandated to complete their activities by 5 daily, and it would be necessary to schedule another meeting to complete whatever business was on the table. Mind you, these were people who regularly worked with elected officials at the national, state, and local levels, as well as the public. When lunchtime or 5 p.m. came, they immediately stopped work, often leaving the file drawer open with the files laying on top as they walked away. It didn't take long for support staff to follow suit. This was not the kind of action to which those that had worked with them in the past were accustomed. Nor was it what one would expect from professionals. It was, however, exactly what was mandated by the new program. Nothing was ever coordinated between them or the other staff. It wasn't long before the new department head was getting a call from their supervisor, who also happened to be a retired colonel, suggesting that they get a handle on the situation and fix it immediately. Of course, there was no disciplinary action because there were no rules violations. Indeed, there was hyper-compliance with the rules established. Things never completely relaxed under the new department head, and I'm sure he wondered why there was no more innovative projects proposed. He had effectively put out the spark that was at the heart of the group, though, and within a year or so there was about a 60% turnover. Five. My father died 20 years ago and left me a tiny cabin house. He loved that place, built it himself and tended to it religiously. After he died, I couldn't find it in my heart to visit, because every rock on the wall, every flower reminded me of him. My mother never cared for it, even when my dad was alive, so within a few months I realized that it would be a while before either of us would be ready to spend time there again. As such, we called up the electricity, telephone, and water companies to shut off services to the cabin until further notice. While other companies complied without an issue, the water company decided this request could only be made by the person whose name was on the bill. Mind you, their fee, due to zoning and a well on our property, was less than $2 a month. Repeatedly faxing the death certificates as well as next of kin transfer of the title got us nowhere. Dozens of calls per month, several emails, in-person applications, smoke signals, interpretive dances, telepathy, etc. Nothing made any difference. Both me and my mother were entirely flabbergasted, so we asked around and found out that indeed the process is unsolvable and, albeit not technically legal, people stopped paying those fees and the water would get shut off anyway as a result. Getting any lawyers involved would not be worth the money, so we did just that. Discontinued the connected bank account, and never gave it another thought. 2 weeks ago, while at my family house, I got a call from the water company. They were closing inactive accounts at the 20-year mark, and my father's cabin was up. They did, however, tell me that 1. There was a pending sum of $11.93 to be paid for the account to be closed, and 2. The account owner themselves had to make the application to close the account. Once again, I mentioned the whole "you know he's dead" spiel, and was passed over to a supervisor, but in a reminiscing demonstration of absolute absent-mindedness and stupidity. The response I got was, "Unfortunately, they have to show up in person, as we need a paper copy for accounts older than a certain number of years. Otherwise, we can't proceed." Now, I don't know how widely common this is, but in my country you rent the burial site and grave in 3 to 5 year increments. My father's grave's 20 years were up in August, and my mother decided it was time to unearth his bones and surrender the site. As such, we had just been delivered a very respectful package with my father's remains, cleaned and curated, only that week. Everyone that has ever gone through this process would recognize that box for what it was, and what it was great timing. 2 days later, I went to the water company's local office. I wore my most purple, silky golf outfit, dark makeup, and oh so heathen jewelry, and carried a large bag with me. I asked to speak to the same supervisor, who luckily for me was in an open space area with their team's director and quite a few more desks. After confirming with her why I was there, she started telling me the whole, "He needs to be here in person." But I interrupted her and told her, "I know what you will say, so I brought him with me so he can tell you himself." I plopped a Ouija board out and the box with my father's remains on the desk, and loudly shushed the area. Heads turned. Her director looked up with a "what the fuck" expression, and the supervisor herself was frozen and wide-eyed. I placed my hands on the Ouija board and just as loudly started asking my father's spirit to communicate with me, show me a sign he was there with us, reach out to me from the grave. Everyone was silent. People walking by the door stopped and stared. I threw a few "Papa, can you hear me?" in there as well, for dramatic effect. In comedic timing that happens once in a lifetime, I think a pen, something, fell down from someone's desk behind me, which against the silence was quite startling. Excitedly, I moved my hand to yes and proclaimed I needed his help in the form of his signature from the beyond in order to close this account. Finally, the director snapped out of it and came over with an, "All right, I can help you over here. I think this is enough." But hell no, it wasn't. I started gathering my things as I laid into him. How asking to speak in person with an indisputably dead man for over 20 years was beyond stupid. And if I had to put up with their idiocy, then they had to put up with the process required to get a hold of him. I also mentioned that denying someone's legal title claim was lawsuit-worthy, so he immediately changed his tune, that I could, of course, close the account. He tried to bring up the fee, but I cut him off with a "don't even think about it," and walked out. It is still early, but so far there has been radio silence. My mother thanked me for handling it, but when I suggested she should write to somewhere higher up about this, she just said, not worth it, it's over now. What a missed opportunity for a "water under the bridge" comment. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 177. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, if you could please boop the like button and share the video with a friend or family member. Okay, let's see, let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: things you love you wish there was a video game for, or at least a good video game. I mean, I'm tempted to say Star Trek, but there's been lots of Star Trek video games, just none I've actually enjoyed. Like Star Trek Online, I find it repetitive. Star Trek Bridge Crew, those are the two that I actually have. Again, it was meant to be this awesome virtual reality game, and you're basically restricted. It's VR, but you can't even move about in it. So I'd certainly wish for a fully immersive, ideally virtual reality Star Trek game. Or what I've wanted for years was like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer video game, done kind of in the style where it's like open world. Think a little like the Arkham games, Arkham City, Arkham Schmooples, no, Arkham Knight. So it's kind of a good, big, expansive map. Probably closer to Arkham Knight because that was the biggest one. But set in Sunnydale and maybe surrounding areas. But that would be kind of cool. You start off, you're a new Slayer and you level up. That sort of thing would be good. And there have been Buffy games, but none quite like that. So let me know what you think. Let me know what your ideas are and leave them in a comment below. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening and take very good care of yourself.